dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yup, what's good, original crew? It's your boy DJ New Kid, your girl.
It's here, Nicole.
And today, man, we got another Mr. Ballen for y'all today, man. We got what this man did will haunt you. It's a little late to be doing a video like this, though. I ain't gonna hold you, bro. Shit. Oh man. Hey, y'all been enjoying the Mr. Ballers, man. Y'all said y'all want a little bit more often, so hey, we're delivering. You asked, we deliver.
Yes.
That's how it's supposed to be. Oh, but I don't know what we in store for today, but we finna find out. So with that being said, as always, before we get into it, always check the links
in the description down below.
You already know where to go, man. Hey, we got other channels. We got other content.
Yes.
We got other platforms we're on. Go check it out. Also, if you enjoyed the video, all we ask is you to do is like it in with a thumbs up. If you got any other Mr. Ballen requests, you can always just spam them up in the comments. Just let us know what y'all want to, you get it. Oh, man, so with that being said, hey, it's Mr. Ballen again with What This Man Did Will Haunt You. Mature audience only. Let's go.
Okay.
Today's story is brutal. If you get to the end, it's the kind of story that's going to leave a mark on you. So viewer discretion is advised. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload 3 or 4 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please tell the like button to go ahead and just stay in the store, pay for the groceries. You're just going to go outside, get the car, and pull it around, but instead just get in your car and leave. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's story. On the far west side of Ohio lies a small town called Wilshire. In 1989, there were less than 600 people that called this place their home, and virtually all of them were middle-class Americans. Most of
What year? I like to get the year and the date.
Okay, let's go
What
back.
he say?
On the far west side of Ohio lies a small town called Wilshire. In 1989, there were less than 600 people that called this place their home, and virtually all of them were middle-class Americans. Most of them were farmers or factory workers, or they worked in one of the very few small businesses in town. While Wilshire was certainly not the most exciting place to live, it did have a reputation for being a nice place to raise a family. It was a tight community of people that looked out for one another. One family that was part of the Wilshire community in 1989 was the Rogers family. They consisted of the parents, Hal and Joan. Joan went by Joe, and they were both 36 years old, and they had 2 daughters, Michelle, who was 17, and Christy, who was 14. Hal and Joe had met in high school. Joe was very outgoing and popular, and Hal was reserved and quiet. But despite their extreme differences, they actually complemented each other very nicely, and they seemed to bring out the best in the other. By their senior year, Joe had become pregnant with Michelle, and so after graduation, the teen couple got married and they moved into a dairy farm to start their life together. And a few years after that, Christy was born and their family was complete. Over the years, Hal and Joe worked extremely hard on their farm, but it just wasn't enough to pay the bills. So to make ends meet, Joe had to get a second job working nights at a factory where she drove a forklift and worked the assembly line. While life was certainly not very easy for the Rogers family, they always found a way to stay positive and upbeat. The girls were very popular in school and made friends easily, and when they were home, they were always goofing around with the farm animals that they loved. As for the parents, they always carved out time every week where just the 2 of them could sneak off and get breakfast or dinner together. But their simple, happy way of life would be shattered later that year when it was discovered that Hal's brother, John, who actually lived with them in a trailer on their farm property, had secretly been assaulting Michelle for the past 3 years. Michelle hadn't told anyone because John had threatened to kill her, but when inappropriate pictures of her turned up inside of his trailer, his horrible secret was out. John went to jail for a very long time, but the damage he left behind was unbelievable. Michelle couldn't even talk about what happened to her. Meanwhile, Hal, her father, was just beside himself. He could not believe that right under his nose, someone was harming his daughter, and that it was his own brother doing it. He wanted to kill his brother, but his brother was in custody, so he couldn't. And making this situation even more painful, Hal and John's mother wound up siding with John. She believed Michelle was lying and it set John up, and she began saying this publicly, and it spread all throughout town. It was just an absolute tragedy through and through, and Hal and Joe had no idea how they were going to recover from it.
This type of stuff do be happening in like small towns, because it's a town of about 600 people, which is a little bit smaller than towns that we're from. We from, me and you are from smaller towns. Your town a little bit smaller than mine, but you know, we both are from small town. But a town of 600 people would be like the town that my mom's from, the one I took you through, that only got like one store and like very, very small. Everybody knows everybody, and it's like a straight shot through. So given that perception, and then everybody knows everybody, so the mom doesn't want everybody to know.
Like the family reputation or whatever to be like.
So you like, I raised my kids right. That's that evil look. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's so sad.
But that's your own grandchild. How you throw your own grandchild under the bus like that? Because
especially a situation like this, it's kind of like,
because she probably know, like, sometimes parents be knowing their kids be a little sick.
True.
The idea of a vacation came. Hal and Joe had no idea how they were going to recover from it. That's when the idea of a vacation came up. Take the kids away from this farm, away from this drama, let them be kids again, let them be stress-free, even for a couple of days. It will do them an enormous amount of good. And so Hal decided he would actually stay back at the farm, and just Joe and the girls would go. It would be a girls' trip. When Joe told her daughters, they were ecstatic. They had never been on a vacation before, and in fact, neither had Joe. Joe told the girls that they needed to plan out this trip, pick the place they wanted to go, plan out the itinerary, but keep in mind they had to drive wherever this vacation was going to be, and their budget was going to be fairly tight. The girls decided on Florida, and for weeks they meticulously planned their itinerary, trying to maximize sightseeing opportunities both on the road trip and also at their destination. Finally, on May 26, 1989, the day had come for the girls to head out on their journey. They said bye to Hal, and then they loaded up into the light blue family sedan, and they were on their way. The trio drove south for about 8 hours on I-75 through Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, all the way to Georgia, which was their halfway point. They found a motel, they crashed there for the night, and then the next morning they got up early and they finished their trip all the way into Florida. And for the next couple of days, they followed their itinerary and went to amusement parks and zoos and other attractions all over the Sunshine State. They were really having a great time. In fact, on May 29th, Joe sent a postcard to Hal that she kind of jokingly said, "The girls are dragging me all over the state. All I want to do is relax." But the tone of the message was really that she and her kids were having a wonderful time. On June 1st, the girls left Orlando, Florida, and made their way to Tampa, Florida, where they planned to go to one more amusement park before they had to turn around and head back to Ohio. Hal had been told they would be back on June 3rd. But when June 3rd came and went and the girls did not show up in Ohio, Hal was not immediately concerned. Hal was very restrained and composed. He almost never showed any emotion. So when things didn't go to plan, he didn't panic. He just assumed that Joe and the girls had decided to stay a little bit longer. They had each other and they would be fine, and he would see them in a couple of days. But over the next couple of days, the girls did not show up and they never communicated with Hal. And so on June 6th, Hal went to the police and he reported his family missing. The police investigation was slow at first because there was a general belief that these women had decided to just stay out longer because they didn't want to come back to this dairy farm that now was home to a lot of terrible memories after this revelation about their uncle. But 2 days after Hal went to police, everything changed. That morning, a motel maid in Tampa, Florida, noticed something odd about room 251. She had cleaned it earlier in the week and had made the beds and put the towels up and moved the occupants' luggage onto chairs and tables so it was nice and neat. And now she was coming back to clean it about a week later, and the room still looked exactly the way it did when she had cleaned it. The beds were still made, the towels hadn't been touched, and the luggage was positioned around the room just as she had set it up.
week later?
A week later.
Why it take you a week to go clean? And did not. When was they check? My thing is checkout time, right? Checkout time, y'all never checked out. I gotta also think about it's 89. So I wasn't even born yet. So I don't know how things was going.
And they even like,
back in the day.
yeah. So.
But I'm thinking like checkout time, nobody's checking out. Normally, you know what I'm saying, they go check. Yo, like, are y'all checking out? You know what I'm saying? Or try to contact the room because it's checkout time.
Or is it the same like housekeeper that like?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it just so happened to be like she went back to their room, like she had their room. And she remember like I cleaned this room and I did this and nothing has been touched since I came in here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like,
I feel you.
Yeah.
Hadn't been touched, and the luggage was positioned around the room just as she had set it up. So she tells her manager, who thought it was strange enough that he called the police and told them about it. The police in Tampa went out to this motel, and they discovered that room 251 was registered to missing people, Joan Rogers and her 2 daughters, Michelle and Christy. The motel manager told police that the trio had checked in on June 1st, but after that, no one had seen them. The police searched their room, and they found their camera, and the final 2 pictures that had been taken were taken inside this motel room. One was of Michelle crouching down, rummaging through her suitcase, looking like she's getting ready to go out somewhere, and the other was taken from inside their room, looking out over their balcony out towards Tampa Bay as the sun was beginning to set. The rest of the search of the room did not turn up any significant evidence. All they knew was the women were not there. And so using the motel as a center point, they began searching the area, and pretty quickly they found Joe's car parked a mile away from the motel near a public boat ramp. Joe and her daughters were nowhere to be found, and initially, there was nothing inside or outside the car to indicate where they might have gone. But upon closer inspection, they found 2 brochures sitting on the floor of the car, and on each of them was some handwriting. The first brochure had a note that was clearly written by Joe, and it was directions to the boat ramp where the car was parked. On the other brochure, the other note, the handwriting was not Joe's or her daughter's. It was some other person's handwriting, and that one was directions to the motel where Joe and her daughters were staying. The police had no idea who wrote the second note, so they started by focusing on Joe's note, the directions to this boat ramp. Specifically, they were looking at the last couple of words in her note where she wrote blue with white. And investigators assumed what this meant was when she got to this boat ramp using these directions, she needed to look out for something that was blue and white. And what would be blue and white at a boat ramp? Boats. And that's when the police made a terrible connection. 4 days earlier, the Coast Guard had made a discovery out in the bay about 25 miles away from where Joe's car had been found. At the time, no one was connecting this discovery to the 3 missing women from Ohio because no one in Tampa knew about the 3 missing women from Ohio. But now that they did know about them, the connection was obvious. While it would take 3 years to finally put all the pieces together, the police would eventually figure out what happened to Joe, Michelle, and Christy. On the morning of June 1st, they got in their car and they left Orlando and made their way to Tampa. When they got to Tampa, they couldn't find their motel. So Joe pulled over on the side of the road and she got out her brochure that had a map of the area. And as she's studying her map, trying to figure out where she is, a man approaches the car. He was white, he was in his 30s, he was average height, average build, he had blonde hair and a mustache, and was just overall kind of unremarkable and unthreatening. And so he went up to the driver's side window, and Joe rolled her window down, and he said to her, are you guys lost? I see your Ohio license plates and you're pulled over here. I'm from the area. Can I point you in the right direction? And Joe would say, actually, yeah, we're lost. We can't find our motel. Do you know where this motel is? And this guy would say, oh yeah, I know where that is. Here, give me that brochure and I'll write the directions down for you. So Joe hands the brochure up to him and a pen and he writes down directions to the motel they're staying in. And then after he gives it back to her, Joe thanks him and he says, hey, would you guys want to come out on my boat tonight and watch the sunset out on the water? It's beautiful. And Joe and her daughters thought, what? This guy's friendly. He's helpful. He seems pretty nice. Sure, we'd love to go with you. And so this guy says, great. I can't can't wait to see you. And he proceeds to give Joe directions of how to get to this public boat ramp where his boat is. And so she takes notes on the other brochure as he's talking. And then he tells her also, you know, when you get there tonight, look out for my boat. It's blue and white. And so she makes the note blue with white. And after that, she thanked the man not only for giving them directions, but for his generosity to allow them to come out on his boat with him that night. And as he walked back towards his car, Joe and her girls followed his directions to their motel. They got there around 12:30 p.m. They checked in. And then after that, it's not really clear how they spent their afternoon. Whether they went to the beach or a park or something like that, we don't know. But at 7:30 p.m., they were spotted leaving the motel restaurant. And then after that, they went up to their room for a little while to get ready for their trip out on this boat with their new friend. And as they were getting ready, putting their bathing suits on and shorts and jackets, Joe or Christy got out the camera and they took a picture of Michelle as she was crouched down getting ready. And they also took a picture of their view from the balcony out over the bay as the sun was starting to go down. After they were all finally ready, they put everything away in their room, they headed down to their car, and Joe drove them the mile over to the boat ramp where they parked. They saw the blue and white boat and their friend was on it, waving to them. And then sometime between 8:30 and 9 p.m. that night, the women boarded the boat and the man took them out into the middle of the bay. Exactly what happened out on that boat, out on the water, is not entirely clear. But what we do know for sure is that at some point, their new acquaintance turned on them. And he almost definitely assaulted all three of them. And then after he was done, he tied them all up. He tied their ankles together and he tied their arms together behind their back. And then he put a strip of duct tape over all of their mouths, but he kept their eyes open. He wanted them to see what he was going to do. And then he went into his boat and he pulled out 3 30-pound cinder blocks and he set them on the deck in front of the three women so they could see what he had. And then he got 3 long stretches of rope and he tied one end of each of these pieces of rope to each of the cinder blocks. And after each cinder block was securely fastened on the end of these long lines of rope, he would tie a noose on the other end of each of these lines. So there were...
I already knew, like, when soon he said boat, you know where my mind went to? Mm-hmm. The other story that we...
Why am I thinking about that too?
Because it's kind of the same situation, bro.
That is so...
And the crazy thing is he saw opportunity because he saw 3 women.
3 women.
He didn't look at it as it was a mom and daughter. He just saw 3 women lost, not from the area.
Not from the area. You checking the place. You know they not from here, so they don't know anyone.
And they stranded and they needed help. You're like, okay, easy opportunity.
That's so sad.
And it's like, then they'll go missing here. Nobody would know. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. He, bro, people are so sick. But I need some more information because I'm like, nobody connected a boat to him, like, or how.
Yeah.
To each of the cinder blocks. And after each cinder block was securely fastened on the end of these long lines of rope, he would tie a noose on the other end of each of these lines. So there were 3 nooses and 3 cinder blocks. Then he grabbed one of the women, he stood them up, he put a noose over her neck, he tightened it down, he walked her over to the edge, and he pushed her off along with her cinder block. And so as she is struggling to stay above the water, her loved ones are in full view of her. They're watching this happen. And then at some point, she sunk below the water and didn't come up again. At that point, the man grabbed another woman, stood her up, put a noose on her neck, tightened it, and then brought her to the edge, pushed her in the water along with her cinder block. And just like before, the last woman on board the ship had to watch as her loved one struggled and eventually sunk below the surface. And then at that point, the man grabbed the last woman, he stood her up, put a noose on her neck, tightened it, and then pushed her off the edge along with the cinder block. And at some point, she too sunk below the surface and did not come up again. And at this point, the man just turned around and drove back to shore like nothing had ever happened. On June 4th, so 3 days after the 3 women were killed, because of decomposition, their bodies had bloated and they floated to the surface. The Coast Guard was alerted to their position. They pulled them out of the water, but because of their extreme decomposition at this point, because of the warm water, they weren't able to ID them. During their autopsy, they found water in each of their lungs, which confirmed they were alive when they were thrown in the water. A few days later, when Joe's car and those notes inside of the car were located near the boat ramp, and the police began to speculate that she, along with her daughters, must have boarded a boat before they disappeared, that was when they made the connection that unfortunately these 3 missing women are probably the 3 unidentified bodies that had been found in the bay a few days earlier. So on the day they make this connection, the police call Hal back in Ohio and they request the dental records of his wife and his daughters. And those records would confirm his worst nightmare. His entire family was gone. The man who killed his family was a guy named Oba Chandler, who was a suspected serial killer who liked to brag about his date with 3 women. In 1994, he was found guilty of murdering all 3 of the Rogers women, but he never took responsibility, nor did he show any remorse. For nearly 2 decades, Oba sat on death row, and not once did he get a visit from a friend or a family member. Nobody wanted to see this guy. And then finally, a little after 4 p.m. on November 17th, 2011, so roughly 22 years after Oba had murdered the Rogers women, he was led into the execution chamber inside of Florida State Prison. After he was strapped down to the gurney, a curtain was slid aside so the witnesses of the execution could see him. And then at 4:08 p.m., Hal Rogers watched calmly from the front row as the man who ruined his life, Oba Chandler, was put to death by lethal injection. So that's going to do it, guys. If you found the secret in today's video, let us know in the comments.
And I said, oh, no, you said he had the nerve to say. No, I was just
going to say, they have the nerve to brag about your date with 3 women. Your date with 3. Come on now. That is so sad.
With them saying he was a serial... Because I was like, I wonder, has he done this to anyone else?
Or did they just...
Because it was too well put together, him knowing what to do, how he wanted to do it. Like, everything was too... You know what I'm saying? Not necessarily he's done the same scenario, but has he killed anyone else?
Right.
And how you as one individual... Well, because for one, y'all out in the middle of water.
Right.
And you're on my boat, but how was he able to overtake 3 women by himself?
Well, that's just like
I'm just like that's a vague answer. Like,
yeah, but that's also just like, for instance,
question,
just kind of like the situation. Not that, but like the situation that just happened here with the dude and like the stabbing. That was 3 women too. So it's kind of like.
But he had a knife though.
No, I get that, but you don't know what he had on his boat too. Like, we're in the middle of the water. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you just assaulted them. Like, there's no telling, like, what's going on.
I'm saying what did he do to even get to the point where he could be able... it's like rhetorical questions. Like,
or were they all already, like, tied up? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
but you can't tie... I'm just saying, it's a rhetorical question.
No, I know.
But,
I know.
And then it's like... I know for a fact, because if that was me on my end, Hal probably is blaming himself. Because I know, well, he probably had to go through years to not blame himself. But typically in a situation like this, most people will blame themselves because he's probably thinking, I should have went with them. I chose not to go with them, leaving them vulnerable. But because you're not thinking of the worst outcome. You're thinking, hey, everybody needs a fresh breath there. Yeah. Hey, my wife, my daughters, y'all go have a good time. Y'all go do y'all. I'm going to stay here, take care of everything on my end. I just want y'all to be able to get away. Y'all get a breath of fresh air. Y'all get away from here. And then y'all come back and we can restart. But me on my end, if that was me in that situation, I would be blaming myself for not going with them. I would be like, because you got so many scenarios you would think in your head. If I was there, we could have just kind of stayed on course a little better. It won't be so random. Maybe if I was there, if we did get stranded, maybe the guy wouldn't have just saw an easy opportunity. Or even if they led up to that, maybe if I was on a boat with them, he wouldn't have. So you got all these thoughts in your head trying to rearrange scenarios because you want your loved ones back. And so me, I'm just saying, like, I know for a fact how I will be, and I will be blaming myself for even saying that we need to do a vacation. Maybe if I didn't say we need a vacation, or maybe if I didn't bring my brother around, we wouldn't even have to go through this situation. So
well, it's
easy.
It's easy to blame yourself, like, but
and that's what I'm saying. But like over
that's
years,
in any situation, yeah.
Because even in the photos we saw of him, he still looks sad because he's had to live over 20 years without his wife. When you marry someone, you're marrying them. You trying to see to the end.
Your wife, your kids.
You having kids. You don't want. You're not trying to bury your kids. You want your kids to outlive you. But then to see them go through a horrible situation like that, that's not something you wish to happen to your worst enemy, let alone your flesh and blood, your love, the love of your life. Like that's not your what loved
ones,
because I'm saying like his wife. That's his love of his life. That's his high school sweetheart. Like we've been together since high school, since teenage.
Yeah, I love you, and I say
I'm just saying, but
your kids.
It's like you can't like in this type of situation you can't help but like as a male in that situation help but to blame yourself. But like I said, maybe it took him some years to kind of and then the dude just sit there and he has no remorse. It took them 3 years to solve this case and he was boastful about it.
Yeah, that's what I said. Like you bragging about going on a date.
We had three dates.
That's weird.
And for them to label him as a serial killer, because this is one incident, but even though you killed 3 people, why would they label you as a serial killer? Are they trying to label you as a serial killer because it
happened? But I mean, you're still a serial killer regardless. But But I get what you're saying. Or did they link other things to you,
or think that you were possibly involved in other murders?
Yeah.
So they possibly think that you. Or has there been other murders sort of with the same MO?
But they just didn't have enough evidence to even know who to pinpoint it to.
Yeah, so they possibly looking at you as the possible killer, but they don't have strong enough evidence. But knowing him, he probably took a lot of stuff to his grave and never said a word. But to be real, you were on death row, bro.
Yeah.
And the reason why he was on death row because he's for one sexual assaulted and killed 3 individuals. So you done did. But I also heard Florida will get you on that death penalty with the ASAP quickness. Yeah. But it's also like how can you like my thing is how you as an individual can live with yourself after doing something like that.
Honey.
And not care. Like not have any remorse. How can you even allow yourself to go through and do something? Because at the end of the day, like people always say, you never know a killer until they kill somebody. But you never know a serial killer until it happens. But I feel like you know a psychopath because they show signs. A sociopath because they show signs. You know somebody who's quick to go off the edge because they show signs, but you never know a killer until they kill someone.
Facts.
But I don't know, man. This case is one of the, and it's because you don't have any answers of why you don't.
That's my thing in my head. I'm like, and that's the thing. Like in my head, I'm like, this couldn't have been your first time, or have you been planning something and you found this is the perfect opportunity to kind of like execute my plan that I probably, you know what I'm saying? Like, cause people like sick people. Plot and plan things so it can be perfect in their head. You know what I'm saying? So that's my thing. Like, what was the reason? There's no reason for doing what you did. You know what I'm saying? So either that was your first time and you just seen this perfect opportunity. You kind of just been like, you know how some people kind of just like yearn to do certain things. Like they have like this, I don't know, this urge to do certain things. Or have you done this before? Because that just was too like from how he explained it, it was just too like
for this to be your first time.
Executed. I don't know.
I'm lost at words with this. I'm really like, I don't know. Man.
But
hey, man.
And the fact that I wouldn't have either. I wouldn't have went to see him. Had no visitors, no nothing. Like you had to be like a very like sick person to no one even want to see you come. You know what I'm saying? No type of family.
Or you wasn't even from there.
Or that. Hey, I don't know.
Hey, man.
But yeah.
With that being said, y'all spam us up. Y'all let us know y'all thoughts and opinions, man. I really don't have too much I can really go on this one because I'm a little confused out this one, man. Oh, but as always, y'all know how it go, man. I do go by the name DJ Mickey. This is
Sierra Nicole.
We are.
Kiddandceemgmt.
We are, y'all.
Ain't no time to kick it, gotta stack a flip for my foes. Dollar, 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 dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar, 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 dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money low, get my team strong. Let me run away from my